The tainted existence of a blood angel starts with murmurs in the mind. I recall the initial occasion when I savored blood infused with recollections that weren't mine. That iron tang flooding my senses conjured images of a demise from 10,000 years ago. On certain nights, my confinement's roof glows crimson, revealing phantom wings in the void. My fellow warriors remain silent on the matter, yet they understand. Gradually, the dark fury seizes us all. Gradually, we succumb to an insatiable craving. While commanding my unit against the Tyranids on this forsaken satellite, I sense the insanity twisting within like a viper poised to lunge. The uncertainty isn't whether I'll yield, but what form my ruin will take once the fragile barrier separating loyalty and perdition shatters. I am Brother Sergeant Darren Vale of the Blood Angels, 3rd Company, 6th Tactical Squad. For 217 years, I have fought in the name of the Emperor and the legacy of our Primarch Sanguinius. I have traversed planets reduced to cinders, confronted the relentless green hordes of the Orc threat, and eradicated the corruption of chaos in every shadowed corner. I have endured while countless kin perished, yet certain ends surpass others in horror. Certain ends ignite far before the last gasp, the Black Rage. We avoid uttering its title aloud. It represents the hidden disgrace of Sanguinius's descendants, the affliction pulsing through our blood, a remnant of our Primarch's last stand against the arch-traitor Horus. Gradually, it overtakes us. Gradually, we surrender to the frenzy, the appetite, the unslakable thirst. Some claim it's unavoidable. Some insist we're condemned from the instant our change takes hold. Maybe they're correct. Still, I have resisted it. Emperor, grant me absolution. I have concealed it. Even now as I guide my brethren into combat, I feel it writhing inside like a viper ready to pounce. The murmurs intensify day by day. I perceive outlines of absent wings. I detect the flavor of unspilled blood. I catch the agonized cries of a Primarch long gone, 10 millennia in the grave. This serves as my admission. This is my declaration. This chronicles my ultimate crusade, the comrades who perished, and my own plunge into oblivion. May these words caution those who come after. The divide between faith and ruin is narrower than imagined. We arrived at Pertitus Secundus not to rescue it, but to guarantee its destruction benefited the Imperium. The moon had succumbed to the Tyranid splinter fleet. The hive mind's tentacles had ensnared the extraction outpost, its organic mass already devoured and transformed. Our objective was stark in its savagery: deprive the foe of its gains. Incinerate it all, scour the surface to barren stone. The descent capsules plummeted like divine sobs from the sky, breaching the air with deafening roars. I commanded the 6th Tactical Squad, 10 armored space marines in scarlet plate, each a forged fighter, each burdened by the identical malediction I struggled to suppress. Our captain, Amalphus, expected the operation to last no longer than 3 standard Terran weeks. A rapid insertion, tactical deployment of cyclonic charges at the moon's structural vulnerabilities, followed by a smooth withdrawal. He erred. The splinter fleet proved vaster than scouts reported, more firmly rooted. What was meant as a surgical assault devolved into a grinding siege, and as each day dragged on, as each clash unfolded beneath the shadow of the Great Devourer, I felt the fury surging fiercer inside. My team inserted amid the wreckage of the former central extraction facility. The atmosphere hung heavy with fungal particles, the terrain slippery with viscous fluids, and echoes of former humans scattered about. Sightlines stretched barely 20 minutes through the haze, generated by the Hive Fleet's vital functions. Vox links flickered unreliably, warped by the Xeno's psychic aura. Advance in Delta pattern, I commanded, keeping my tone firm amid the mounting ache in my skull. Brother Theron, lead the way. Brother Malachi, guard our side. Everyone else hold a 5-minute interval. We pressed to the key target. The key target. The main excavation bore of the facility, an enormous chasm plunging 3 kilometers into the lunar bedrock. Reports suggested the Tyranid organisms had repurposed it as a core processing vat, dissolving the colony's gathered life essence into components for fleet proliferation. Our duty involved positioning fusion bombs at calculated spots encircling the bore, undermining the whole structure, and igniting a cascade via the linked passages. We navigated the debris with honed efficiency, weapons primed, perceptions sharp for stirrings. The typical scuttling and hissing of minor tyrannid strains was oddly missing. The quietude turned ominous, an oppression weighing on our combat instincts. Sergeant Vale? Brother Theron's transmission crackled over the Vox, contacts forward, several blips advancing coordinated. Scale estimate? I queried, gesturing the squad into cover positions bigger than Hormagaunts. At least 8 warrior bioforms, maybe even more. That's when the initial shudder hit, not shaking the earth under our boots, but rippling through my thoughts, a fleeting recollection that wasn't mine. The polished halls of the vengeful vessel, the crushing aura of the war arm master, the agony by the Emperor, the agony as the claw stabbed deep. I shoved the image aside, clenching my jaw against the mental breach. Brother Sergeant, Malachi's call yanked me to the present. Quote 1, quote 2, I growled, my tone harsher now. Quote, they burst from the fog like incarnate horrors, tyrannid warriors, their shells slick with dew, claws and bony armaments ready to reap meat and skeleton alike. 8 of them, advancing in that horrific unison that screamed of the hive mind's iron grip. Trailing were the lesser swarms, Hormagaunts in a horde too vast to tally swiftly for the Emperor and Sanguinius. I bellowed, lifting my bolt gun. Fire! The thunderous blasts of bolter rounds ripped through the eerie quiet. Explosive projectiles slammed into chitinous plating, erupting in sprays of viscera and ichor. 2 warriors crumpled in the opening barrage, their frames shredded by aimed volleys. A third lurched as Brother Cassius unleashed his plasma cannon, the searing plasma melting clean through its chest. Yet they pressed on relentlessly. The diminutive beast charged ahead, a torrent of talons and maws, disposable fodder hurled to drain our munitions and drag us into melee where their endless ranks could overwhelm. Steady, I barked. Rear line, lob grenades. Front line, brace for melee. The frag grenades soared overhead, blasting amid the clustered lesser tyrannids. Scores perished in every detonation, ripped asunder, yet countless others scrambled atop the corpses of their kin. Then the clash began. My chainsword hummed alive, its adamantium fangs gnashing through Zeno's tissue. I battled with the flawless technique instilled in every blood angel. Every strike a lethal ballet honed across ages of conflict. A claw raked my shoulder guard, probing for the vulnerable joint at my throat. I twisted, snapping up my bolt pistol and blasting at point-blank range into the beast's visage, pulping its senses in a gush of ichor. Brother Theron battled beside me, his power blade sparking with disruptive force as it lopped appendages and bisected bodies. Brother Malach's heavy bolter raked side to side, mowing waves of the tiny fiends before they could swarm us. But reinforcements never ceased. The tyrannid swarm scorned casualties, blind to terror or doubt. It merely devoured, evolved, and surged back stronger. Sergeant Vale! Brother Raphael's shout pierced the melee's chaos. The warriors are circling our flank. I glanced and spotted 3 of the massive bioforms lunging with dire intent toward our exposed left, where Brother Cassius wrestled a faltering plasma gun. The device had surged too hot, its machine spirit in revolt, now spewing scalding vapors skyward. Brothers Theon, Malachi, secure this spot, I directed. Brothers Raphael, Lazarus, on me. We shifted to block the warriors, our bolters spitting controlled salvos. The monsters were sly, exploiting the wreckage for shelter, darting forward in synced advances that hinted at cunning well beyond the drones. One toppled under our unified barrage, its skull and chest pulverized by bolter impacts. The pair survivors intensified their push, bioplasma emitters belching with nauseating hisses. Brother Lazarus howled as the acidic sludge hit his plate, corroding ceramite and searing the skin below. My helm's readout showed the havoc, the abrupt vital surge, followed by the grim cessation. Fury boiled up inside me, a scarlet flood on the verge of drowning logic. My sight blurred with bloody phantoms. Briefly, the tyrannid before me warped, its shape dissolving into another, one marked by the Sons of Horus Legion badge. Quote 11. Raphael's urgent call jolted me. Your orders? I battled the delusion, dragging focus back. Target the injured one, drop it. We unleashed a torrent on the impaired warrior, its shell at last yielding to the relentless pounding. As it collapsed, I lunged at the last foe, chainsword whirring with feral appetite. The warrior countered with alarming quickness, its claws ringing off my edge. We dueled in the cramped ruins, a fatal waltz where one error spelled oblivion. Its tail lashed out, hammering my thigh with impact that buckled the plating. I reeled but kept balance, retaliating with a chainsword arc that hacked off a minor limb. The thing wailed, a psychic screech that drilled straight into the psyche. In that instant of mental barrage, the crimson haze fell once more. I saw not the Xenos abomination right in front of me, but the massive silhouette of the chaos-tainted war machine's lord, his plating etched with vile emblems of disorder, gaze brimming with ancient spite that predated mankind's rise. You let him down, Blood Angel. A murmur echoed through my thoughts, not from the aliens, nor any familiar tone, but emerging from the shadows of my innermost being. You let Sanguinius fall. You'll abandon your kin. The red thirst will consume every one of you. No, I bellowed, the cry ripping free from my lips unbidden. Fueled by fury and sheer resolve, I plunged my chain weapon into the foe's midsection, its whirring blades ripping apart the innards within. Alien ichor splattered over my plate as the beast convulsed in its final spasms. Once it slumped motionless, I noticed Brother Raphael eyeing me, his helm cocked in silent inquiry he wouldn't utter. Quote 14, I declared, the sacred phrase serving as a barrier to his wordless worry. Quote 15. I kept silent about the murmurs, the phantoms flickering at the periphery of my vision. Such candor was a luxury I couldn't indulge, not with our duty teetering on the brink, not when confessing reality would signal the red thirst's grip tightening on me already. Reuniting with the team, I assessed our casualties. Brother Lazarus slain, his gene seed secured by the apothecary. Brother Cassius injured yet operational, his suit sealed with hasty repairs. The squad bore assorted harm, yet everyone stayed battle-ready. The portal to the core conduit stands 200 meters forward, I announced, pulling up the strategy overlay on our linked feed. Reports indicate fiercer opposition nearing it. The Hive intellect grasps this site's importance. With deference, Brother Sergeant Theron interjected, his transmission isolated on the leadership line. The troops require a break. We've fought non-stop for 17 hours. Our augmented bodies aren't infinite. He spoke truth. Undeniably, my logical side conceded. Yet another facet, intensifying hourly, yearned solely for combat's catharsis, the instant the chain blade tore into meat and Vite spilled unbound. 30 minutes, I allowed. Nothing beyond. Secure a guard ring at this spot. Brothers Raphael and Malachi handle initial sentry. The others, check your gear and mend your plating. The Emperor demands flawless performance from Sanguinius's heirs. While my fellow warriors executed their duties with drilled precision, I shifted to a vantage overseeing both them and the path ahead. I unclasped my helm, inhaling the rank atmosphere of this crumbling planet. It reeked of rot and Xenos taint, yet it sharpened my focus against the apparitions pressing in. From a pouch in my armor, I retrieved a slender phial. The crimson fluid inside snared the scant illumination filtering through the toxic haze. Our chapter's blood priest's anti-thirst elixir paled against my true hunger, but it would serve. Just 3 portions left. Beyond that, sheer determination must carry me to the operation's end. Lifting it to my mouth, I sensed Brother Theron observing from the far side of our impromptu barrier. His features concealed by his helm, still I bore the burden of his scrutiny. He might not grasp my affliction's depth, but he suspected irregularity in his leader. I gulped the acrid brew in one go, its fire searing my gullet. The easing was slight yet evident, the scarlet fog pulling back a touch from my sight's borders. I donned my helm anew and opened the secure comm to him. No issues, brother? A beat of quiet followed. Negative, Brother Sergeant, merely confirming squad readiness for engagement. A tactful reply, though its subtext rang plain. I overlooked it, San's remark. Preferable to uphold the facade of routine over facing the reality we both avoided. The half-hour elapsed swiftly, and we resumed our trek. The wreckage thickened en route to the primary excavation conduit, edifices warped and reshaped by tyrannid bioadaptation. Former domiciles and refineries now evoked the innards of an immense Xenos entity. Surfaces gleamed with ooze, throbbing with eerie organic glow. Quote 16. Brother Raphael signaled, his auspex scanning the terrain. Quote 17, quote 18, I queried. Hard to parse. The bio traces overlap like multiple entities sharing volume. A chill gripped my transhuman core. Genestealers. I pronounced the term a malediction. The swarm's spearhead. They'll have burrowed close to the key target. Genestealers, the tyrannid swarm's saboteurs, ranked among the deadliest among the most lethal of the tyrannid bioforms, were the Genestealers. Swift as lightning, equipped with talons capable of shredding ceramite plating, these beings represented the pinnacle of predatory evolution. Unlike fellow hive creatures that relied on sheer volume or raw power to overpower foes, Genestealers struck with surgical accuracy and a sly intellect that verged on sinister awareness. Standard purge protocol, I commanded. Brother Malachi, position your heavy bolter as our mainstay. Brothers Theron and Raphael, secure the sides. Everyone else, move forward in an offset formation, maintaining 5-meter intervals. Prepare flamers. We neared the shaft's access point with deliberate wariness. Every footfall drew us nearer to the teeming cluster of vital readings. The portal yawned ahead of us. What had once been a flawlessly constructed mining gateway now appeared as a cavernous orifice encircled by throbbing organic masses alive with eerie vitality. The assault, when it struck, outpaced even our augmented responses. They burst from hidden spots, violet-hued figures blurring into near invisibility with their velocity. 6 Genestealers, their chitinous shells spiked with osseous spikes, limbs terminating in scythe-like talons designed to lacerate ceramite on impact. Brother Cassius bellowed a warning, unleashing his flamer in a sweeping torrent of promethium that engulfed one beast in mid-air. It wailed as the holy flames devoured its hide, convulsing in its final spasms. The remaining attackers bridged the gap with terrifying velocity. I unleashed my bolt pistol in a flurry of shots. The reactive projectiles slamming into one entity's chest. Explosions ripped away sections of its form, yet the beast pressed on, fueled by the hive mind's unyielding directive. Brother Malachi's heavy bolter thundered, shredding another Genestealer beneath a storm of detonating bolts. A third vaulted past its slain companion, talons outstretched toward the gunner. Brother Theron met it head-on, his power sword slicing clean through the reaching appendage before whipping back to impale its cranium in a gush of ichor. I confronted one of the horrors face to face, its grotesque visage a horror of teeth and probing sensors. It glided with the seamless poise of a supreme hunter, prowling for any flaw in my defenses. My chainsword revved eagerly, its machine spirit eager for carnage. The Genestealer sprang forward, its claws targeting the soft points in my power armor. I countered with the chainsword, the adamantium blades howling as they mangled the alien's reinforced arm. It snarled in agony but held firm, deploying its lesser limbs to seize me and drag its maw toward my helm. The beast's mass shoved me back a pace. Its power was staggering, far exceeding what its lithe build suggested. I raised my bolt pistol, pressing the muzzle beneath the Genestealer's mandible, and fired. Its cranium burst apart in a mist of shards and neural tissue, the frame collapsing without resistance. As I shoved the carcass aside, an agonized yell sounded from my rear. Brother Cassius had fallen prey to the final Genestealer, its talons piercing his plating at the midsection and hoisting him off the earth. Before we could intervene, the monster's auxiliary maw gaped wide, exposing a thicket of needle fangs that plunged into the vulnerable skin of the brother's throat. Fury ignited in me like a stellar cataclysm. A crimson haze engulfed my vision, erasing logic and all but the primal urge to destroy. I barreled toward the fiend, shedding the mantle of Brother Sergeant Darren Vale for something raw and monstrous. The sequence that ensued blurs in my memory. Fragments endure. The chainsword's bite into Xenos tissue, the splatter of ichor over my visor, the howls, some from the enemy, others heartbreakingly familiar. When awareness resurfaced, I was surrounded by the butchered fragments of the Genestealer. My armor gleamed wet with its lifeblood. Brother Cassius sprawled nearby, helm discarded, features ashen from hemorrhage. Our apothecary, Brother Raphael, labored urgently to save him, injecting combat drugs and sealing wounds with hasty field kits. The squad formed a wary perimeter, their postures betraying unspoken fears. They had observed it. They had beheld the berserk wrath that had seized me, the unraveling restraint marking the onset of the black rage. Brother Sergeant Theron drew near with care, his bolter held in ambiguous readiness, not aimed fully at me, yet not holstered in trust. "Are you still one of us?" The query held layers beyond its brevity. Did I remain their leader? Had I retained command? Or had the madness consumed me, rendering me a threat to my fellow warriors? I willed calm into my reply. I stand with you, Brother Theron. The Emperor shields us. Skepticism shadowed his posture, but he inclined his head, granting my assurance, for the moment. Brother Cassius survives, though he cannot press on with the operation. The apothecary urges swift transport back to the strike cruiser. "No," I declared, my voice brooking no dissent. Argument broke out. We lacked the manpower to assign him guards, and solo transit across such unfriendly ground was out of the question. He'll stay by our side until the main goal's achieved. Afterward, we pull out together. I picked up on Theon's reluctance, yet he didn't dispute my call. As my deputy, he could have spoken up. Doing so, though, would have weakened our hierarchy at a pivotal moment. He opted for a curt nod and went back to his spot. With Brother Cassius patched up for now, we pressed on toward the shaft's mouth. The passage ahead had undergone Tyranid bioengineering overhaul. Its surfaces were blanketed in throbbing living tissue that appeared to inhale and exhale independently. Glowing organic clusters emitted a ghostly, flickering illumination, throwing elongated shades as we delved further into the facility. The core shaft formed an enormous upright void, plummeting well past what our armor lights could reach. It once contained the enormous rigs that mined the satellite's ore riches. These days, it resembled a horrorscape of biological mutation. The sides throbbed with odd protrusions. Skin-like formations spanned the empty expanse, akin to the strands of an immense arachnid. Down at the base, scarcely discernible in the murk, lay a huge vat of swirling vital sludge, the key breakdown basin our scouts had pinpointed. "Keep vox chatter minimal," I commanded, while we claimed a spot on one of the lingering service walkways attached to the shaft's side. "Brother Malachi, set up defenses in this area. Brothers Theron and Septimus, stick close to me. We'll deploy the explosives at the marked locations. Everyone else, watch our rear." Discovery prior to planting means the op's doomed. The strategy involved positioning melter devices at 3 vulnerable spots encircling the shaft. The blast would not just seal the shaft, but ignite chain reactions of collapses across the tunnel system, wiping out the Tyranid breakdown vat and a hefty chunk of their organic refinement operations. Brother Theron, Brother Septimus, and I started the cautious drop along the service rungs embedded in the shaft's flank. The steel had rusted through, eroded by the harsh biosubstances the Tyranids deployed in their reshaping efforts. Several times, a step buckled under our plated bulk, compelling us to grab firmer holds. As we dropped lower, the mental strain mounted. The swarm consciousness loomed larger here, right in its operational core. It hit me like a persistent hum at the nape of my neck, a foreign awareness grazing my psyche, scanning, seeking vulnerabilities. Along with it surged the images, more vivid now. Glimpses of the spiteful ghost's halls, the crushing aura of the War Master, sanguineous, glorious in his fury, pinions unfurled as he confronted his sibling-turned-renegade. The sting of disloyalty cut deeper than any bodily harm. I slipped on the rung, my hold slipping briefly. Brother Sergeant, Septimus's transmission crackled over the vox, worry clear even through the static filter. "It's fine," I replied, injecting firmness into my tone. "Move to your spot." We parted at varying heights, each bound for our specific deployment sites. My target sat deepest, closest to the breakdown vat proper. Upon arriving at the bottom ledge, just 30 meters over the roiling biomess, the reek assaulted me, seeping past my suit's purifiers. The breakdown vat blended dissolved vital pulp, half-melted corpses, and alien enzymes that dismantled living tissue into basics for the swarm fleet's uptake. I crept along the ledge, alert to each noise, each tremor that could tip off the lifeforms underneath. The melter device epitomized Imperial tech, sleek yet potent enough to demolish the beams propping up this shaft segment. I crouched, extracting the unit from its reinforced container, and initiated the activation protocol. That's when it struck, not audibly, but mentally, a non-verbal entity that pierced the warp to interface with my cognition straight on. Son of Sanguinius, it murmured. Yes. The phrase coalesced from countless subordinate psyches in unison. We savor your dread, we savor your fury. It draws us near. A signal amid the emptiness. I went rigid. The melter half-activated in my grasp, the swarm intellect's utterance, or maybe from one of its elite neural beasts capable of piercing a space marine's psychic wards. Your species intrigues us, the entity pressed on. Each syllable slunk through my consciousness. The defect in your heritage, the craving that echoes ours. You're scarcely apart from us, son of Sanguinius. You devour, you adjust, you advance via the lifeblood of foes. Hush, Xeno scum! I snarled between clenched jaws, my fingers once more busily assembling the explosive device. Quote 19. Yet even as the words escaped my lips, a horrifying realization dawned. The creature's assertions rang with undeniable accuracy. The crimson craving, the ebony fury, they mirrored the tyrannid's insatiable devouring in ways I couldn't deny. An appetite that defied fulfillment, an emptiness impervious to satiation. We can aid you, the whisper suggested slyly. That hereditary defect of yours, we could mend it, assimilate it, refine it to perfection. Unite with us, heir of Sanguinius. Yield to the swarm. Your cravings would forever be quenched. For a fleeting, agonizing instant, the proposition lured me. To yield to that parching desire, to cease the endless war against the shadows lurking inside. The red thirst had ensnared countless of my fellow warriors, propelling them toward insanity and demise. Maybe the Xenos spoke some kernel of verity, maybe capitulation offered a path to liberation. But then my vow resurfaced in my thoughts. The visages of my comrades in arms flashed before me. Sanguinius, the divine being who sacrificed himself not in submission, but in bold resistance to malevolence. In the name of the Emperor and the Angel, I bellowed, finalizing the device's activation with brutal resolve. The melta-charge emitted a single beep, its indicator shifting from yellow to crimson. 10 minutes to blast. The mental intrusion flinched away, only to surge back with intensified fury. Gone was the allure. Now it brimmed with extraterrestrial wrath. Quote 23. A disturbance in the churning vat beneath drew my gaze. The dense, syrupy fluid roiled with greater ferocity, grotesque forms breaching the top. Tyrannid creatures materializing from the depths like horrors incarnate. Their physiques still shaping, mutating, tailoring themselves precisely to track and eliminate me. I triggered my comms unit. Quote 24. Brother Theron's reply crackled through at once. Affirmative. Sergeant, explosives primed at Site 2, commencing retreat. No word from Brother Septimus. Septimus, status report, I commanded, already retreating toward the service hatch. Only interference replied, followed by a moist, bubbling noise that chilled my blood. The unmistakable gurgle of an Astartes choking on his vital fluids. Sergeant, Septimus's transmission emerged at last, feeble and ebbing. Quote, no 28. His vitals flatlined across my visor readout before I could reply. One more kin fallen, another entry for the ledger of the slain, another spirit fueling my retribution. I scaled the accessway with the utmost haste my enhanced physique allowed. From below came the clamor of hunters closing in, the skittering and snarling of tyrannid beasts in predatory frenzy. They scaled the conduit sides effortlessly, talons gripping the fleshy incrustations blanketing every inch. Brother Malachi, I signaled forward, pursuers on my tail, get set to lay down suppressing fire for my exit. Understood, Sergeant. Ordnance primed. As I approached the elevated deck where my team held position, the lead stalker entered weapons range. Malachi's storm bolter erupted in a deafening roar, reverberating through the tight enclosure. Explosive rounds shredded the ascending Tyranids, detonating inside them and hurling the wreckage into the void below. I hauled myself onto the ledge and pivoted to confront the chasm, bolt gun drawn. Flanked by my squadmates, I unleashed my shots into the relentless salvo that held the swarm in check. Quote 32. Brother Theron inquired, his weapon spitting controlled volleys. I glanced at the timer embedded in my helmet's readout. 7 minutes. We must vacate the facility prior to ignition. Primary gateway will be swarming with foes, he observed. The synaptic nexus grasps our intent. It'll throw all assets at blocking our path. He spoke true. I already detected the alteration in the psychic aura, the unified psyche reallocating its minions to seal our flight. Our planted ordnance would inflict grievous harm on the Tyranid foothold here, obliterating a key nutrient refinery. The Overlord wouldn't permit such a setback unchallenged. Quote 36. I resolved, the utility conduit paralleling the central bore. Quote 37. We commenced the fallback, advancing in tactical array, each warrior shielding his fellows during the pullout. Brother Cassius leaned on 2 companions for support, his wounds barring solo progress, yet his firearm remained gripped tight, aiding our stand. The service passage matched the mission schematics, a cramped corridor scarcely accommodating our powered suits in line abreast. The overhead was cramped, forcing us to stoop, forcing us to shuffle forward in a crouched stance, a humiliating position for the Emperor's elite soldiers, yet essential for staying alive. Brother Malachi, you're on rear guard, I commanded. Brother Theron, lead the way. Everyone else, safeguard Brother Cassius. We'll proceed at a pace his wounds permit. The passage extended before us, feebly illuminated by failing light fixtures that stuttered and dimmed. The atmosphere hung heavy with grit and the constant fungal particles from the Tyranid onslaught. Our power armor's filters labored furiously to block the bulk of it, though traces slipped through, bearing the eerie mental echoes of the swarm consciousness. We'd pressed on for about 200 meters when a transmission crackled over the comms. Contacts detected ahead, several figures closing in on us. I glanced at the timer once more. 4 minutes to explosion. We had to clear at least a kilometer from the access point before the explosives triggered, or we'd get buried in the resulting collapses. Iterators, quote 41. I directed, shifting ahead to link up with Theron at the vanguard. Quote 42. The corridor bent gently ahead, blocking our view of the incoming dangers. Still, our suit sensors picked up their advance. The tremors of their steps rippled along the ground beneath us. Suddenly, they emerged from the turn. Not the alien bugs, but people, or remnants of what used to be. The settlers of Perdidus Secundus, warped by genestealer corruption. Their forms were grotesque mockeries of humanity. Skin ghostly pale, arms stretched and ending in talons. Their features held faint traces of their old selves, amplifying the terror of their change. Spotting us, they rushed in, their speed freakish for beings who still echoed human shapes. The initial wave of the genestealer cult, the spearhead for the Hive Fleet's subtle conquest. In the Emperor's name. "Cleanse the tainted!" I bellowed, my bolt gun firing in quick bursts. The lead 3 mutants crumpled, shredded by the detonating shells. Brother Theron's heavy weapon thundered alongside, unleashing a barrage of destruction in the tight passage. More hybrids surged on, scrambling over their slain brethren, propelled by the relentless Hive intellect. A few wielded drill gear as crude arms. Others depended only on the rending blades and teeth their mutation bestowed. In the cramped tunnel, our greater armament ought to have halted them cold, yet their horde was vast, a ceaseless rush of mangled bodies barreling down. And from behind, echoes of chase from the entry, the tyrannid beasts shadowing our scent. We were pinned, anvil to hammer. Brother Sergeant Malachi signaled from the back. Quote, Fa 44. Minimum extraction distance impossible now. The decision loomed stark, the price steep. Quote 45. I declared, tone firm amid the dire stakes. Quote 46. No elaboration required. All Astartes grasped the idea of tolerable sacrifices. Every descendant of Sanguinius embraced dying for the Emperor as triumph, not loss. Quote 47. Brother Sergeant Theron started to protest, but I silenced him. Quote 48. Briefly, defiance flickered in his eyes. Then a single nod, blending salute and goodbye. Quote 49, quote 50, I replied. Quote 51. Theron, Raphael, and Malachi surged ahead, focusing their onslaught on one stretch of the mutant front, blasting a gap with the merciless precision of death's heralds. We survivors locked into a shield wall, facing the hybrid flood with bolters primed, while tyrannid shadows loomed at our heels. "For Sanguinius and the Emperor!" I shouted, and my squad roared back, unyielding against inevitable doom. The abominations crashed into us like waves on rock. The passage's squeeze meant just a handful could strike at once, blunting their swarm edge. My chain blade howled as it ripped into foul tissue, every swing a devotion, every slaying a tribute to the throne. Brother Nemeus went down first, a prospector's tool shattering his visor with lethal aim. Brother Cassius, still hurt from the prior clash, battled on his knees, bolter spent, then swinging it like a mace to batter the foes. The cranium of a hybrid that strayed too near shattered under the impact. Just 2 minutes remained before the explosives blew. Yet a fresh wave of intrusion clawed at the fringes of my consciousness, more intense than any prior assault. The collective psyche had devoted greater mental energies to our destruction, likely detecting the peril from the planted devices. Tension mounted in my skull, accompanied by glimpses of recollections that weren't mine. Visions unfolded of the imperial fortress's grand halls. I sensed the justified wrath as Sanguinius faced the supreme betrayer. I lived the instant of devastating insight when the Primarch grasped that his sibling was irretrievably ensnared by chaos's taint. "Horus," I murmured, the word tasting foul in my mouth. The apparition engulfed me entirely. Gone was Brother Sergeant Darren Vale, battling within a forsaken shaft on a condemned satellite. In his place stood Sanguinius, the noble Primarch, confronting the tainted Warmaster amid the shadows of the vengeful spirit. The mutants ahead morphed, their grotesque forms sharpening into the countenance of Horus Lupercal, formerly the Emperor's cherished heir, now Chaos's unholy conduit. A bellow of fury and torment erupted from me as I surged ahead without restraint. My chainsword lay abandoned. My fists yearned to rip to shred, to annihilate the traitor who had shattered the Emperor's grand vision. The comms from my comrades faded from my ears. The gashes from claws and improvised blades piercing my power armor's seams registered no longer. Nothing mattered but the fury. The red thirst, that inherited flaw of the Blood Angels, had seized me utterly at last. 1 minute to blast off. Amid the crimson fog veiling my sight, I vaguely realized I'd pushed past our barricade, plunging into the horde of abominations and forsaking my squad. I'd shattered ranks, defying the strategic doctrines etched into my being over endless campaigns. Yet halting was impossible. The fury forbade it. "Brother Sergeant," a voice sliced through the storm, faint yet recognizable. Brother Cass, his vitals dimming on my visor readout. The passage crumbling, bombs igniting ahead of schedule. A buried sliver of logic, smothered under ancestral echoes and mental barrage, absorbed the details. The devices were activating too soon. The tyrannid beasts might have uncovered them, or the alien surroundings had sabotaged the fuses. The cause was irrelevant. Annihilation approached, rapid and absolute, but the fury disregarded it. The fury recognized solely the foes in its path, the compulsion to battle on until my final exhale, until both my hearts stilled. The shaft quaked from the initial explosion, remote yet forceful enough to reverberate here. Grit and rubble cascaded from overhead, the hybrids wavering in their onslaught, their synaptic link likely alerting them to the looming ruin. I exploited their pause, felling 3 others with wide arcs of my fighting blade. My chainsword had vanished amid the madness long ago. Fluids, Xenos ichor, and my vital essence coated my plate, staining its scarlet hue to a slick obsidian sheen. The next blast struck nearer. The tremor rippled along the conduit's framework, hurling several mutants off balance. Alert glyphs flickered on my helm's interface, signaling collapse across the facility. This service corridor wouldn't endure. "Brother Sergeant," a firmer call broke in. Brother Theron overriding on a crisis channel. Evac sites overrun. Massive tyrannid swarm. We're isolated. I struggled to reply, to issue a last directive that could preserve part of my unit, but speech eluded me. The fury gripped my throat, permitting only guttural cries of wrath. The ultimate eruption proved the fiercest. The central meltabomb at the operation's core, at long last erupting. The passage caved in my wake, a torrent of stone and alloy entombing my surviving kin and the pursuing tyrannid swarm. The surge hurled me onward, my suit's mechanisms shorted briefly from the blast's fury. Moments passed in void and hush. As my sensory arrays rebooted, I lay in a surviving stretch of the duct, though it teetered on ruin. The hybrids lay slain or scattered. Solitude enveloped me, severed from my team, from any rescue prospect. The lunar mass overhead creaked as fresh subsidences ravaged the site, yet the fury still seethed inside, craving release, craving slaughter. I lurched upright. My armor's gyros offset the harms that would fell a baseline mortal. My display lit with alerts, breaches in the ceramite, wounds rending the augmented tissue below. I dismissed them. Agony meant nothing, oblivion meant nothing, duty and wrath alone persisted. The passage ahead lay half buried in rubble, yet it remained navigable. Lacking any superior choice, I pressed on, every stride bringing renewed torment, every inhale pulling gritty particles into my injured lungs. I have no recollection of how much time I spent traversing the decaying bowels of the excavation site. Chronology blurred into irrelevance. My timepiece lay shattered in the perpetual gloom, interrupted solely by the erratic flicker of failing backup lights, rendered any sense of elapsed minutes futile. At last, I broke through to the lunar surface. The vista unfolding before me bore no resemblance to the scarred outpost we'd encountered upon initial descent. In place of the dilapidated but familiar settlement stood a massive pit, the epicenter of our fusion blasts. The explosion had exceeded expectations, not merely caving in the primary tunnel, but devouring a broad swath of the adjacent earth. Perched on the brink of ruin, a fleeting spike of dour triumph cut through the fog of my shadowed fury. At minimum, the objective had succeeded. The Xenos biorefinery lay in ashes. Any assets they sought from this satellite were forever beyond their reach. The swarm armada stood diminished, however marginally. Yet as I scanned the wreckage, awareness dawned that solitude eluded me. Motion registered in my augmented sight. Silhouettes stirred amid the scorched expanse, remnants of the cataclysm, tyrannid beasts clawing free from debris, reassembling with the ruthless precision that rendered them a scourge upon the Emperor's realm. And they sensed my presence. Even as I observed, a handful of the lesser specimens veered, advancing deliberately in my direction. The synaptic nexus persisted, marshalling its spawn in the ceaseless devouring that shaped their being. I inspected my arsenal. My sidearm hung dry, its clip exhausted during the subterranean skirmish. My blade endured, albeit its razor-fine edge blunted from clashing against the chitinous plating of the abominations. No explosives, no substantial armaments, only the seething wrath. As the tyrannid silhouettes closed in, the shadowed fury swelled once more, on the verge of eclipsing the brief lucidity born from the post-blast hush. Phantoms tugged at my mind's periphery, recollections of a demise I'd never endured, a treachery I'd never beheld directly. This time, I offered no resistance. Rather, I welcomed it, allowed it to course through my veins like a scarlet flood, scouring away hesitation, purging dread. If oblivion awaited me on this forsaken orb, I would face it as a rightful heir to Sanguinius, impelled by the Archangel's own tempestuous zeal. The initial tyrannid assailant arrived, a battered gaunt, bereft of one slashing claw, ichor still oozing from the ragged end. I countered its lunge with my own, evading the surviving appendage and plunging my dagger upward into the vulnerable abdomen beneath its exoskeleton. It convulsed in terminal spasms, almost ripping the hilt from my fingers. Others swarmed in, a blend of gaunts and chimeric horrors encircling me in a cacophonous ring of extraterrestrial veracity. I battled with the recklessness of the departed, scorning protection, devoted solely to slaughter. When my weapon shattered upon the reinforced shell of a bulkier foe, I hammered with gauntleted blows, with stones wrenched from the soil, with the mutilated appendages of vanquished Xenos. Temporality dissolved in the crimson mist of melee. I dwelled solely in the perpetual instant of carnage. every heartbeat severed from the prior, every vanquishing a distinct rite in warfare's creed. I cannot tally how many succumbed to my onslaught. I cannot recount the gashes I endured. The shadowed fury propelled me past such earthly trifles. When awareness resurfaced, I stood solitary amid a ring of Xeno's remains, my plate so compromised it no longer sealed against the void. The moon's venomous air seeped unchecked through numerous rents. My augmented frame labored to adapt. Crimson fluid, mine mingled with foes, clung to my boots. The fury ebbed, not vanished, but briefly quenched by the butchery. In its retreat followed agony, weariness, and the stark inevitability of doom. My duty fulfilled, yet I lingered marooned on a waning world, hemmed by adversaries devoid of pity, terror, or bounds, restrained only by the biomass at hand for assimilation. Termination loomed. This truth arrived not laced with dread or remorse, but with a soldier's resolve. Annihilation had shadowed my vigil for 200 years of duty. We shared a seasoned bond, the scythe-bearer and I. What gnawed at me was not demise itself, but its essence. The shadowed fury had ensnared me utterly. No reversion to composure awaited, to the ordered life of a squad leader in the Emperor's legions. The subsequent eruption of wrath would bind until my form collapsed completely. Within the Brotherhood, those overtaken by the shadowed fury were collected into the Death Company, their plate reforged in ebony, their identities etched as fallen. A chaplain ushered them into the fray, directing them to glorious ends against humanity's foes. This marked the final honor, granted to those who yielded to the floor, offering one last shot at perishing in duty instead of lunacy. No such honor awaited me, no chaplain to steer my wrath, no comrades to guarantee my end honored the Emperor, only the fury and the ceaseless craving of the tyrannid swarm. If I didn't select a different route, my fingers reached for a pocket in the remnants of my plate. It stayed whole, its holdings preserved. The tiny flask of inhibitor, my final injection. It wouldn't heal the black rage, no remedy existed. Yet it could buy me a handful more hours of sharpness, sufficient to shape my destiny myself, rather than let the Xenos or the affliction in my veins dictate it. I discarded my shattered helm, allowing the poisonous atmosphere of Perditus secundus to scour my lungs raw. The sting sharpened my focus, offsetting the anger that still bubbled just below. The lunar heavens glowed a foul ochre, shrouded in fungal blooms and aerial taint from the tyrannid onslaught. I lifted the flask to my mouth and swallowed, sensing the acrid fluid sear its way down. Relief hit swiftly. The crimson fog pulling back from my sight's borders, the ghostly echoes of Sanguinius softening to murmurs over roars. Clarity brought resolve. I refused to perish as a feral monster drowned in wrath. I wouldn't fuel the tyrannid biomass. I'd meet my end as a space marine, as Sanguinius's heir, by my own decree. The extraction site lay in ruins, yet other goals on this satellite could advance the Emperor's cause. The tyrannid incursion orbited the primary settlement, its synaptic core rooted in the former governor's citadel. Recon had flagged it as a backup objective, one our primary squad under Captain Amalphus would strike once our disruption task wrapped. I inspected my gear survivors. My plate's energy cores flickered erratically, lending patchy aid to my strides. My Vox unit bore scars, though it could handle brief bursts. No working firearms remained, but my warrior drills rendered me deadly bare-handed. It had to suffice. I plotted my route to the settlement, to the core of the Xenos' blight. At worst, I could lure some tyrannid beasts from the key Imperial push. Each foe fixated on me meant one fewer clashing with my squad mates. The trek proved grueling. The terrain had warped not merely from our interference, but from the tyrannid's relentless devouring of the moon's bounty. Smooth expanses now jagged with bioforms, the soil swathed in a writhing mat of foreign flora that clung to my tread with each footfall. More than once, I crossed paths with tyrannid scouts or laggards from bigger swarms. I evaded clashes when feasible, gliding by via the covert skills drilled into every blood angel. When clashes proved inevitable, I struck swift and savage, muting the Xenos before they summoned reinforcements. Nearing the settlement, the enemy density thickened. The structures, once proud in Imperial Gothic style, had been devoured and reshaped into colossal ossified innards. bone spikes thrust at the putrid vault above, throbbing skin pouches dangled amid them, their functions arcane, yet undoubtedly foul. And swarming the scene, the Tyranids. Gaunts roamed in clusters, their steps synced by the unseen grip of the hive will. Bulkier fighter breeds guarded vital spots, their bio-rifles primed for intruders. Overhead, gargoyles wheeled on bat-like sails, their sharp wits probing the earth. I hunkered behind a warped outcrop that had likely been a dwell unit. Weighing my entry, a direct charge spelled doom, even for a veteran. But an alternate route might exist. In the pre-mission rundown, the settlement's blueprint had shown undercity conduits and waistlines snaking below the avenues. Should those passages hold some wholeness, they could lead to the synaptic core's depths with scant opposition. Tyranids favored overt barriers, their outsider minds often overlooking the cunning tactics humans had honed across eons of strife. I spotted an access hatch, half entombed in the encroaching bio-slime. The panel, rusted and half dissolved by foreign acids, yet it buckled to my augmented might after a short tussle. Inside waited gloom, the atmosphere heavy with rot and Xenos chemistry. I halted at the entrance, sensing the inhibitor's effects fading. The hallucinations were resurfacing, subtle at first, yet intensifying. A crimson fog edged back into the edges of my vision. I wouldn't have much time before the dark fury overtook me once more. Yet maybe it didn't require resistance. In these last moments, it might be harnessed instead. The Death Company chaplains didn't eradicate the anger in their warriors. They guided it, redirecting the savage frenzy against the Emperor's foes. Lacking a chaplain, I'd need to serve as both the blade and the grip that controlled it. I stepped into the gloom, navigating more by instinct and recollection than by eyesight. My suit's automated sensors were impaired, offering only sporadic data, ethereal shapes amid the total obscurity of the subterranean routes. The passages formed a labyrinth, with sections crumbled and others warped by the Tyranid takeover into something alive and nightmarish. I lost track of how long I roamed those unlit halls. Time no longer mattered. The inhibitor fully dissipated, and the vision surged back with full intensity. Still, I clung to a tenuous grip, reciting the litanies of loathing from the chaplain's lessons, sharpening the fury into a tool I could aim rather than a delirium that ruled me. At last, I perceived, more than spotted, a shift in the surroundings, a massive expanse looming ahead, faintly lit by glowing organic clusters. The core room of the Hive Nexus, formerly the governor's grand residence. I advanced with care, hugging the shadows of the entryway, and gazed upon the epicenter of the Tyranid corruption. The space was immense, its roof vanishing into blackness overhead. Every wall and floor bore the same living matter I'd seen earlier, but denser here, more mature, throbbing with extraterrestrial vitality. In the middle rose a formation hard to define, a spire of meat and chitin stretching toward the far vault, encrusted with throbbing pods and twisting appendages. Encircling it were Tyranids, dozens upon hundreds, in forms I'd faced before and others unknown. Warriors, gaunts, massive carnifexes, all positioned in rippling rings around the core, motionless, not devouring, just inactive, in stasis. That's when realization hit. This wasn't simply a hive nexus, it was a Norn queen lair, the origin point for fresh Tyranid life forms. The throbbing pods on the spire cradled emerging bioforms, the upcoming wave of invaders that would devour this satellite and then spread to further planets. Destroying it could hobble the whole assault, buying the Imperium's troops vital moments to rescue the colony's surviving inhabitants, and maybe even declare exterminatus on the moon before the Tyranids regrouped. But how? I carried no bombs, no potent armaments, nothing capable of harming the core, much less obliterating it. And even if equipped, the swarm of Tyranid beasts guarding it would shred me well before I got close. As I weighed my choices, a known feeling grazed my psyche. The psychic aura of the hive mind, more potent here than elsewhere on the world. Yet now, rather than disgust, I sensed an odd attunement, the black rage inside, the inherited echo of Sanguinius's demise, pulsed in sync with the foreign awareness. A horrifying notion took shape. Tyranids formed a psychic swarm, their beings linked via the synapse, linking lesser creatures to the overarching hive consciousness. That bond was their power, enabling them to operate as one entity, evolving and reacting with superhuman unity. But bonds go in both directions. I'd sensed the hive mind probing my thoughts, its otherworldly call echoing in my head. If it could invade me, maybe I could counter-invade, not through psychic might since I possessed none, but via the hereditary affliction coursing through my blood. The black rage, the fading recollections of a primarch, a being of colossal psychic force. Utter folly, naturally, but madness already gripped me. The fury had me, and I survived on stolen instants. What remained to risk that wasn't already lost? I crept deeper into the chamber, remaining concealed in the dimness, and settled into a spot with a clear view of the central spire. Then I did something no blood angel was ever instructed to attempt. I quit battling the rage. I welcomed it utterly, yielding to the ancestral echoes, allowing them to rush through me unchecked. The hallucinations engulfed me entirely. I ceased being Brother Sergeant Darren Vale. I became Sanguinius, the exalted angel, confronting the war master on the vengeful spirit. I shared his wrath, his grief, his resolve as he faced his traitorous sibling. I endured his agony from the lethal strike, the claw rending his torso, vitality draining from his glorious body. But this instance, rather than trapping these apparitions inside my skull, I hurled those visions outward with every ounce of will my fading life could muster. I pictured them as a mental howl, a surge of unfiltered feelings and recollections aimed straight at the extraterrestrial force encircling me. The impact hit right away and proved devastating. The inactive Tyranids closest to me started jerking and convulsing. Their link to the hive mind shattered by the abrupt rush of human sentiments and experiences. The convulsions rippled across their formations like a tide, every creature influencing those tied to it, the chaos intensifying as it propagated. The mental recoil slammed into me like a solid strike, forcing me down onto my knees. Crimson streamed from my eyes, nostrils, and ears as capillaries burst from the pressure. Yet I kept broadcasting the images, pouring out whatever strength remained in this last stand of resistance. The core edifice itself started throbbing unevenly, the pouches on its surface splitting open sequentially, dumping deformed Tyranid offspring across the room's ground. The spire wobbled, its appendages flailing chaotically as though gripped by agony or bewilderment, and amid the turmoil I sensed the hive mind's essence, not remote and otherworldly anymore, but close and appalled. It had never faced anything resembling the black rage. It possessed no shield against the visceral turmoil of a primarch's demise. The hereditary recollections of Sanguinius, embedded in my lineage, proved poisonous to its icy logical awareness. I lost track of how long that mental clash endured. Duration lost all relevance in that void between realities, yet in time I perceived a snap, not inside myself, but within the foreign entity, a cracking, a shattering of the cohesive intellect that commanded the Tyranid beings. The consequence for the tangible forms was swift. Certain ones crumpled completely, their neural pathways scorched by the mental echo. Others lashed out at their fellows in blind wrath, ripping into their own with the ferocity they typically saved for victims. The sharper synapse organisms attempted to reimpose control, yet they suffered too, their movements disjointed, their intent adrift. Regarding the central edifice, the supposed Norn queen, it imploded inward, the pillar of meat and chitin crumpling like foil, the leftover pouches exploding in quick bursts. Whatever foreign intellect had shaped its expansion was vanished, abandoning mere lifeless matter that swiftly rotted away. I had triumphed far beyond any dream or anticipation. The hive nexus lay ruined. The Tyranid swarm on Perditus Secundus stood directionless and splintered. They remained lethal, battling with personal savagery, but deprived of the hive mind's directing intellect. They could no longer evolve, no longer synchronize their assaults on the Imperium's troops. Yet, the success exacted my utter toll. The remnants of my augmented form deteriorated its speed. Vital organs failing sequentially, conduits still splitting amid the mental toll. The black rage had devoured me whole, scorching my essence like promethium, yielding only cinders behind. As shadows engulfed me, a last sight emerged, not Sanguinius and his end, but an altogether different scene, radiant gold, soothing and inviting, an entity immense and timeless, brimming with stern reckoning and boundless mercy. The Emperor not as the cadaver divinity adored by the throng, nor as the aloof tactical master esteemed by the highborn, but in a deeper essence, the manifestation of mankind's promise, the protector of its spirit. His scrutiny fell upon me, assessing my devotion, my offering, my missteps and victories in equal measure. I met his verdict with the serene resolve of a soldier who had expended all. What arrived was comprehension, not absolution, for the Emperor absolves naught and none, but recognition of a task completed to its harsh conclusion, of an existence devoted to mankind's endurance. As my awareness dimmed for the ultimate time, I caught phrases that could have been genuine or just the delusion of a perishing psyche. Even in death you have served. So concluded the existence of Brother Sergeant Darren Vale of the Blood Angels, seized by the Black Rage, vanished on an overlooked satellite at the fringe of Imperial territory. No comrade beheld my closing instance, no chaplain inscribed my title in the Book of the Fallen. My gene seed went unrecovered to sire forthcoming heirs of the angel's lineage. But maybe this account, this admission, endures somehow. Maybe it acts as caution and spur for those treading Sanguinius's trail. The affliction in our veins is tangible, kin. The fate that claims us all is inescapable. But even amid perdition, purpose can arise. Even in frenzy, an offering can honor the angel's legacy. We stand all adrift. We stand all condemned. But until the last gasp departs our frames, until our pulses halt, we may select our confrontation with that condemnation. We may elect to render our destined plunge aid, the Emperor and mankind. Remember this, sons of Sanguinius. As the red thirst surges through your veins, as the black rage whispers your name, know that you face no isolation in that shadow. Your Primarch's recollections accompany you always. Ultimately, this common curse could emerge as our most potent tool in battling humanity's foes, for the Emperor, for Sanguinius, for the blood that binds us,